Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Manifest. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with the fact is we're dealing with the aftermath of the fire, that Isaiah started, and obviously, there are lives that were lost in the whole situation, and a body is pulled from it, and it appears to be TJ's because it's the thing that Olive had given him last episode. And obviously, Olive is kind of grieving because it's like her first love that's ever died. She's already had to kind of go through too much in one lifetime, losing her twin brother, her dad, her aunt, and now it's just on top of that, and it's like you found someone special in your life, and then just kind of have that taken away, especially because it's a combination of sadness and guilt because she, sadly she blames herself because she's the one that got involved in all of this, and it ended up leading down this path, and even Ben is feeling guilt as well because he's dreaming about TJ because he couldn't come back for TJ, and he feels bad because he feels like he not only let TJ down, he feels like he let Olive down, and that that whole situation haunts him. And there's even that thing of Simon shows up, and which obviously you just we know, and just you being there just seems a little dickish because in a sense you're there to spy and everything, but it also just it's almost like you being there is almost like gloating that an 828er died. But obviously for Olive it's wait, everyone at school, some people at school are kind of sad about it and stuff, no one knew TJ, they treated him like an outsider, like a freak because he was an 828er, and and so it's that thing of suddenly people are grieving and stuff like that, which is so interesting because that was a thing kind of in Dare Me, this week's episode, the whole kind of grief vultures type of situation. But it's a combination of for especially now that Olive knows, because there was at least some part of her that was hopeful that maybe TJ was out there, but he wasn't, and especially when Michaela shows up to tell them he's not, that they found a body, and it just it breaks her. And obviously Ben, for him it's he felt like he already drove a wedge between him and Olive, and it's he was right about the whole Adrian and the believers thing, but it doesn't make this situation any better, him being right. It's not one of those things I was better and everything's okay, but it's no, things aren't okay. And the fact of the matter is, it's already there's already a gap between them just because of everything, and he feels like he ended up pushing her even further away. It's so how do I, bridge that gap? And I thought it was so interesting because Grace brings something of since you've been back, you haven't really taken the time to really process the fact is that your mom died. Michaela, she dealt with it kind of more so than anything, but Ben, because he's been so busy on kind of helping everyone else, he hasn't really helped himself. And that's actually, I think it's kind of an interesting thing that Ben, I feel like Michaela's going on many journeys of self-discovery over the course of the series so far, but so his self-discovery is through helping other people. Same thing as Michaela's to a certain extent, but in Ben's case, it's just a situation of it seems like he's kind of putting everyone else kind of before himself, so it's you should take time to kind of deal with that yourself. But obviously for Ben, he wants to help Olive out, but it's you can't help her with her grief. She has to kind of go through it, but obviously for Ben, he's trying to understand what that page is all about. The man walking through the fire holding the lady in a star, and he's touching it and he's hearing this chanting. But and typically if he ends up getting a calling, it means typically Michaela will end up getting it or something too. But it turns out Michaela didn't get it. It was something specific to him. I wonder, did purely touching the book channel that, or was there something more to it? We'll kind of get to that soon enough. Obviously he wants Olive to help him with it, but Olive wants to have nothing to do with the callings because it's what does it matter what they can do, because they didn't help us find TJ. It showed you carrying me out of the fire and everything, yeah sure, but where was it before things went down? Which is obviously it wasn't the calling's fault, it was just terrible situation, but it's the signs were there, just it was hard to piece together. You're only getting a small portion of the puzzle, you're only getting a small portion of the bigger picture, so it's hard to really always kind of get ahead of the whole calling situation, but Ben follows it to this Zen place, and it's the moment I see it, it's right, because TJ's mom was a Buddhist, and so Ben's hearing the chanting there and everything, and he decides he wants to help take Olive there because it's maybe this is what the calling wants. It wants to be a means for us to kind of spiritually give you closure. And obviously Olive doesn't want to do it for the sake of the doesn't want to do it for the sake of the calling, but she will do it for TJ's sake. So they go there and they kind of, do their own ceremony, their own do-it-yourself kind of ceremony of kind of honoring TJ. Like, they're sharing their memories for Olive, telling that sweet aspect of like how like, oh yeah, like she was too embarrassed to admit that she did remember him from the Jamaica trip, that she for like the past 5 years had a major crush on him. The fact is, like, his kindness, his smile and everything, and Ben talking about like, yeah, like that first day, that test run at school, and the fact of the matter is you showed up there to support me, not just as like a student or an 828er, but as a friend, and I was like, oh, that was pretty dope. But even with that all said and done, them kind of, Olive being like, I hope, you kind of found your path. I'm going to keep looking for mine. But when they was about to leave, the chanting still kept going on, and Ben falls. I'm like, where's this going to take them? They keep going and going, and, well, I should kind of go ahead and say I did not watch the trailer, but it kind of got spoiled. I didn't watch the trailer, but it did kind of get spoiled for me that TJ was alive. Kind of wish that didn't happen, but it's like, I'm not going to blame anyone for that. It's just like, someone told me some information, or like it was in the trailer, which is like, yeah, it's already out there if it's in the trailer, so it's like, I can't use that against you. I kind of, like, the moment we saw, I was kind of already like, yeah, I should kind of like cut the pretenses. I'm recapping it, but honestly, I kind of already knew TJ was alive, and especially because it's like, it was around his hand. I'm like, why would it be on his hand? It would be on his wrist, unless it's like, yeah, I knew it had to be Isaiah's body because Isaiah most likely grabbed onto it. I was like, so I figured as much, but still, I was like wondering like how this was all going to play. I was like, okay, like, but they kind of follow it more and more, and it seems like basically there's this underground kind of bootleg place type of tunneling that connects to the bar, and the chanting kept getting louder and louder, and obviously Olive was not about to back down, so she's like, hell, let's go for it. And lo and behold, they find TJ because he had that's what the chanting was all about. It was a means of finding TJ and getting to him. He's in pretty bad shape, but even the doctor was like, it was a miracle you found him, because luckily, who knows, in his condition, in a couple more hours he wouldn't have made it. So I was also hoping that home dude would be, what was his name, Finn, the dude that we saw Ben and Olive kind of walked past because of the smoke and everything, which I was almost hoping, I was like, oh, is he going to be in there with TJ? But he's not. But I'm like, maybe they found his body. Probably, sadly not. It's probably going to be the situation, though. They made a point to show that, probably just to be like, he is dead, or we're going to get the reveal later on. They're like, oh no, he was one of those people that was found alive, because wasn't it someone found, like, I think it was like someone said they found their brother alive. They thought their brother was gone, but like, oh, their brother was there. So I'm wondering if that was probably like an 828 thing too, because there were non-828ers there as well, obviously, but it was a lot, like the whole point was to go after 828ers. But regardless of all of that, I thought it was kind of, it was kind of neat, especially, it's like this whole calling situation brought them together, and it leads to this interesting conversation between Ben and Michaela, because, their mom had said that thing of like, oh, what was it, the line, she repeated it in the episode of like, the thing of like, all things connect and lead to good, essentially. And even he's like, this calling about TJ, the callings in general, it's like they're trying to teach us something that affected the matter. I'm wondering what it is. Is it just purely like the fact that maybe it's a thing of that, your own, like, it is interesting because it's like you saved Olive and everything, but it's almost like it put TJ in a position where he wouldn't have to worry about it, because you would ultimately save TJ without having to be. I don't know. It's interesting. Why not? Because I guess at that moment it's like saving Olive took priority, because she wouldn't have, like, if you try to save both of them, none of you would have made it. So it's probably a thing of like, it's almost like a domino effect of like, okay, it's kind of like contingency plans upon contingency plans of like, you had to go down this path, but that's because this was all going to happen, like stuff being determined and predetermined, stuff like that is what I'm curious about. But I think it's all fascinating in the long run, and I'm curious like what that's all going to end up being. It's like, luckily TJ's alive and everything, so everything kind of worked out in that regard. We did learn from I forgot who had brought it up, but Adrian seems to have gone underground. I think yeah, it was Simon who brought it up. So I think. So Adrian's kind of going on the ground. So I'm curious. I mean, obviously he blames himself for everything going down. He didn't recognize his signs. And once again, he was full of crap. He didn't believe all that he was preaching. So he was giving false. I mean, because of all he did, he inspired people like Isaiah, So, that guilt's got him hidden away. But I mean, I doubt that's going to stay around forever. Like eventually he's probably going to get another calling to kind of redeem himself. So it'll probably cross paths with the Stones in that case. But we'll see. But another aspect of this episode is the whole situation with, obviously it's like, well, it's like, because obviously Drea was kind of suggesting, like, when they were having a meeting at the station about the whole fire and everything, and it being Isaiah, but Drea was like, yeah, this seemed like something the extras would do. And you have Jarrett being like, nah, it doesn't seem like that. And she's like, you're so sure about that? He's just like, I just got that feeling or whatever. And obviously Drea brings that up to Michaela being like, yeah, something's up with Jarrett. Like, he's so sure it wasn't the Xers and stuff like that. And Michaela kind of pieces that together with just the way Jarrett's been acting, him copying her files and everything. She thinks he's with the Xers. So it's like we kind of have no choice but to kind of follow him around, which they do. Because obviously, like, well, at first, she doesn't get to see this, but obviously he's at the meeting with Simon, and Simon's like, oh, humanity first type of situation. Which obviously they don't think of themselves as a hate group, but you kind of check off a lot of the boxes for a hate group. But the fact of the matter is, Simon's like, we've kind of got our plans, but Jared, I need you to kind of keep an eye out for Billy. Billy's one of our great, people. Like, he's good at recruiting people and stuff like that, but he gets a little ahead of himself, and he's afraid that Billy's one of those people that might act first before thinking. And obviously, Jarrett brings this up to Billy, but Billy kind of like, whoa, what are you talking about? No, I brought you into the organization. First you're with my sister, now you're all up in Simon's ass and stuff like that. It's like, I'll take you or whatever. With Jarrett's like, it's like Jarrett kind of has to walk away. So it's like, man, he's like, he even saying like, oh, your big mouth is going to get you in trouble. And it's like, man, that ends up becoming, like, we'll get to that soon enough. But obviously it's like seeing Jarrett and his girlfriend making out, and it's kind of hard for Michaela. And it's like, yeah, it's like, it's hard enough to feel like it's bad enough. Like, it's like, yeah, it's not good seeing Jarrett kiss another woman, but at the same time, it's a situation of, well, because for Michaela, she's worried that, like, all this is happening because of her. She starts blaming herself, being like, maybe, because she doesn't want to believe it at first, because it's like, Jarrett, this is the man that, I was going to marry. There's no way that man I was about to marry would go down this route, be a part of some hateful group like this, especially considering the fact is, he literally came to the bar to help and everything. So that kind of makes you go, okay. But, Drea was kind of like, well, people changed, and so she decides to kind of go in there. I even love it being like, oh, what was it? A beautiful princess. She saw like a beautiful princess kissing her Prince Charming or something out front. She's like, maybe I'll find my future husband in this bar. And she challenges Billy and the boys to like a pool, and apparently she walks away winning. And I also love, like, when it's all said and done, it's like, yeah, like Drea drops the news of like, yeah, these people are Xers, making Jarrett definitely probably one of them as well. Also, some you probably also don't want to hear, the bartender actually smells really nice. And Michaela's like, yeah, I need to get me a new partner. She's like, nah, you love me. No, I don't. Yes, you do. It's like, I like that they already kind of hitting it all. But looking into it, running Billy's file and everything, you find out that, he clearly is an Xer. And obviously the whole thing is like, okay, so what are they going to do about it? It's like, because none of this is something, just because you're an Xer doesn't mean, as long as you haven't done anything illegal, it's not like they can bring you in for that. So they end up getting they end up planting a bug in the bar, because, Michaela shows up there being like, the fact of the matter is, maybe you're a girl like Jarrett. Like, the fact is, it's like, I'm not here to try and tell you to break up with Jarrett or anything like that. You and Jarrett should get away from this situation. Like, the fact of the matter is, I think you're the good person I think you are, and that's just over your head. The fact of the matter is, your brother, he's a lost cause, but Jarrett isn't. So trying to help him out. I wonder, was Michaela hoping that was going to work, or was it just, I guess she knew that if she said the right keywords, that it would kind of set everything in motion, maybe. I don't know. Kind of bringing Jarrett up and stuff like that would kind of trigger everything, because it turns out it does, because Billy goes there and does exactly what Jarrett said. His big mouth is going to get him in trouble, and he runs his mouth. They've got the recording. They bring it to the cabinet and everything. She's like, all right, I'm going to look into this. It's like, yep, clear. 828ers, yep. Jarrett, oh, I'm like, yeah. I was like, getting suspicious. Then she plays it for Jarrett and is like, we got a problem. Which you could immediately think like, okay. Once again, I'm like, okay, you got me back on board of like, okay, you're undercover. Like Michaela and Drea are potentially going to blow your undercover case, which to be fair, at this point, the best solution is to kind of keep it from blowing up. It's like, you got to bring them into the fold. But obviously you want to keep this very tight knit because if too many people know, because especially if they get Michaela in particular involved, it's going to draw too much attention, you know. So maybe that's why the captain did what she did. Maybe this was all for the purposes of kind of splitting them up for this particular job. Or maybe the captain was like, I can take advantage of your current situation. You're very public and situation with Michaela and use it to our advantage. Because at the same time, it's like, despite their personal issues, every time the situation calls for it, Jarrett does show up. Once again, it could have been easier if he's really rolling with the X's. I might have brought this up last episode because I think I was still kind of flip-floppy about it. I was like, no, Jarrett, you can't be. But it's like, no, he's definitely undercover now. I should have just stuck with my gun. I figured as much, but there was still that small part of me that was like, oh, no, maybe I'm wrong. It's like, no, he's definitely undercover. That's what this is all about. So it's going to be interesting to see what they kind of do about that, you know. What's going to really be interesting too is like Jarrett knows that Simon's involved. I don't know if he necessarily knows that Simon's connected to the college and stuff like that Ben works at, which we should also talk about the fact this Simon's got like photos of all of Ben's stuff. So it's like he knows exactly who the 828ers are because Ben knows who all the 828ers are and connect like all this stuff. He also knows about Zeke being connected to this. So now he also knows it expands not just with 828 but beyond 828. So now it's going to be a situation of like, you know, the book, the star card and everything. So it's like, you know, they already look at like obviously the passengers as not human and thinking they have special powers and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, so what's this going to turn into? What's their plan and everything? So it's going to be curious to see how, you know, they handle, well, all that kind of going forward, you know. Another side of this is, Sanvi and Zeke, because obviously Zeke's situation with his frostbitten fingers is gotten worse and it's spreading. So he's hoping for a solution. And Sanvi's like, well, my cure seems to have gotten rid of the marker, but the fact of the matter is we don't know. For one, it's gotten rid of the marker, sure, but she doesn't know if it's gotten rid of the death date. So it's that type of situation of like, there's a potential cure, but for Zeke, he's like, I'd try anything because like he feels like he's finally in a good spot with Michaela and everything. He's able to kind of finally like pull himself together because of her, and he doesn't want to lose that. You know, he's literally got 6 months on the clock. Sanvi, you know, is saying she's test running this, so it's like, but you know, if all his stuff comes back and shows that like he's okay for her to use this on, then we can test it out and see if it'll work on you. But you know, because even she was like, well, we don't know if about all the side effects, because you know, for her, like hearing that about, you know, Zeke, it's like, okay, like for her, she kind of feels like she had kind of love in her life and she was kind of, you know, missed out on that opportunity because like because later on she runs up and she ends up running into Alex and kisses her, and I'm like, oh, I guess like she got inspired by Zeke's like passion for Michaela, that she, you know, Sanvi wanted to kind of make it, you know, give it a chance of her own. But then Alex shows up later and it's like, it was sweet, but the fact is I've made my choice. I've chose my husband and my family. But then Sanvi's like, what are you talking about? It's like, you kissed me this morning. She's like, actually, I don't remember. So we're like, okay. So here we are. I already brought it up like, you know, because Sanvi was like, oh, we don't know about the side effects. It's like, I literally brought it up last episode that there are going to be major side effects of it, and it turns out there are. So now she's blacking out. So the thing is it kind of like, she seems like she's on autopilot. It might be a thing of like, basically she's kind of given into her deepest desires. What she desired is Alex, so that's why she acted the way she did. But still, like, that's one thing we're aware of she did. Who knows how much time she lost and what, you know. Because she had also brought up who knows how long this thing is going to last. Like, is it going to be permanent? Is there any way of reversing it? You know? Maybe it kind of whereas the callings kind of lead you on, like, a certain path, give you a vision and stuff like that. Maybe because she interfered with it, now it's kind of a little jumbled inside of her head. And so, and rather just kind of pointing her in the right direction, it's literally like putting her in autopilot just because she interfered with, like, the callings process and stuff like that. Maybe it's actually not completely going away. Maybe it's like somewhere in the back of her mind, like her subconscious, and just like her subconscious is clawing at her mind to like act upon the callings and it's just manifesting itself that way. You see what I did there? Manifesting. Didn't even plan to do that, but it just ended up coming out of my mouth, and I was like, oh, that kind of fits. Regardless, I'm curious to kind of dive into that and find out like the full scale of like what that ends up being. Like, once again, we don't know if it officially got rid of the death date. Once again, why they warned Salvi not to experiment on herself, but she's so desperate for answers. Because, I think because of the whole major situation, I think that kind of pushed her to kind of act very rationally in the situation. But it's going to be interesting to see where that takes us, along with everything else going forward into the next episode. Really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.